So much time and energy are spent on how to make and keep employees engaged. Margaret Cousins once said that appreciation can make a day, even change a life. Your willingness to put it into words is all that is necessary. So much work has been done to prove that recognizing employees leads to a more engaged workforce. There's even a national study from the Society for Human Resource Management, published in 2015, which found that highly engaged employees had almost universally been praised at work, with low engaged employees responding the opposite. And similar to that, highly engaged employees almost universally said that their manager cares about them, with the opposite being reported by low engaged employees. That was a national study that essentially says there is a link between employee recognition and employee engagement. We now have data specific to UMC that speaks to this national study and what we have always suspected. UMC rolled out nDorse hospital-wide in early July of 2017 as a way to foster a culture of recognition and to help develop a culture of excellence throughout the hospital. In just under 300 days, the following measurable data has been collected. There have been 14,406 endorsements sent, with over 2,000 employees that could average out to about 7 independent pieces of recognition since the launch of nDorse. However, that's the law of averages. In actuality, there are some standout people, like Chanel Johnson in patient access, who has received 70 endorsements and won the Service Excellence Award at UMC this quarter. Or Loris Greathouse, who was recognized for compassion and endorsed by Toya Smith. She won 2 PJ's gift cards and promptly gave one to her coworker in the OR because she not only espoused the core value of compassion, but also teamwork. But let's get to the meat of it. Is this impacting employee engagement? We pulled data from the engagement surveys, which were proctored in October of 2017, and we cross-referenced that with data that we pulled from nDorse during its first 90 days of use. We only used data from nDorse from July of 2017 until October of 2017 when the engagement surveys closed. We didn't pull any data after the engagement survey window was closed. The data collected looks at 52 departments and 2,160 employees spread across the entire hospital. We wanted to see if our beginning premise is true. That is the premise that employees who are recognized more will in turn be more engaged. So we looked at departments that had a high number of endorsements to see if there was correlation between the average number of endorsements received by each employee and the overall rating as a place to work question. So we're looking at the overall rating as a place to work on the y-axis, and down here on the x-axis, we're comparing it to the average number of endorsements per person. We'll call this first grouping the one endorsement group. This group represents 17 departments in which employees in these 17 departments received about 1 endorsement. These departments grew, on average, 4.45 points on the rating as a place to work question. The second group we'll call the 2 endorsement group. This group also represents around 17 departments, and on average, employees within these departments received 2 endorsements. This grouping grew, on average, 6.55 points. And then our final grouping also represents around 17 departments. On average, these employees received 3 or more endorsements, and they grew 7.21 points on the rating as a place to work question. And when we put all of the data from the 51 departments into a linear regression calculator, we found that there was a 0.8 correlation between the number of endorsements that a person received and the growth in the rating as a place to work score, essentially saying that departments in which employees received more endorsements saw their overall rating as a place to work score increase more. However, what we really wanted to see was, does it actually have an impact on employee engagement when an employee's direct manager recognizes that employee? Using the data that we pulled from nDorse, and once again the NRC Health Survey, we were able to see that correlation as well. We looked at 3 different groupings this time. The first, low manager utilization of 0 to 7%. And what that means is a direct manager only recognized between 0 and 7% of their direct reports in nDorse. The second grouping was the medium manager utilization. That manager only recognized between 8 and 24% of their direct reports. And finally, we have the high manager utilization. This is a manager who recognized 25% or more of their direct reports in nDorse. We then compared that data to 3 different buckets. The first being overall rating as a place to work, exactly like the previous 2 pieces of data. We then looked at manager investment as a key driver within NRC Health. And then finally, we looked at peer-to-peer relationships as a key driver within NRC Health. Using the rating as a place to work data from the NRC Health Survey, we compared that to 3 new groupings. Our first grouping, low manager endorsements, represents departments in which less than 7% of employees were recognized by their direct manager. In this grouping, we found that the scores grew 3.53 points. Our second grouping, medium manager endorsements, represents departments in which less than 24% of their employees were recognized. In these departments, we saw on average growth of 4.31 points. And then in our high manager endorsements grouping, where over 24% of employees had been recognized by their direct manager, on average, these departments saw growth of 7.04 points. That's pretty significant growth. Drilling down deeper into these results, using the same groupings as before, we'll see if manager recognition within nDorse had an impact on manager investment overall. The data that makes up the manager investment grouping within NRC Health Engagement Survey is really a compilation of 3 questions. The first question is, do I benefit from a one-on-one relationship with the person I report to? The second, does the person I report to create opportunities for my professional growth? And finally, do I have all of the tools to do my job effectively? And when looking at the manager investment growth from 2016 to 2017, here's what we found. In the grouping of low manager endorsements, they grew on average 0.69 points year over year. The medium manager endorsements group grew on average 1.94 points year over year. And the high manager endorsements group grew on average 7.32 points year over year. But then we wanted to look at one more thing using those same groupings as before. What impact does this have on peer-to-peer relationships? This is going off of the assumption that if a manager recognizes their employees, it's going to trickle down into building a positive culture in that department. The peer-to-peer relationship grouping and NRC engagement survey looks at 4 different questions. Do I have friendships with my work colleagues outside of the work environment? Do I have great relationships with others who I work with? Do I look for opportunities to support others I work with? And do the people I work with treat each other with respect? And here is what we found looking at the year-over-year growth of the peer-to-peer relationships grouping. In our low manager endorsements group, we actually found that peer-to-peer relationship scores decreased 1.01 points year over year. In our medium manager endorsements grouping, we found that scores on average decreased 0.17 points on the peer-to-peer relationship score. But in departments that had a high manager endorsement of direct reports, we saw peer-to-peer relationship scores grow on average 4.76 points from 2016 to 2017. Before we conclude, a quick word of caution. We are talking about a positive correlation here and not causation. There are so many incredible things being done by leaders and employees at UMC on a daily basis. Different initiatives and action plans 100% impact these scores and employee engagement. However, nDorse is the only item that we're able to pull data on to show correlation. So, in short, we saw an increase in engagement scores almost across the board, which is fantastic. We saw that there was a positive correlation between genuine and specific pieces of recognition and increased employee engagement. So big takeaways, catch your team doing something right and recognize them for it. And thank you for your continued effort of building a culture of recognition at UMC.